Hello, and thank you for joining us for the reunion of Cheer New York, My Black Experience. My name is Matthew Brown.
And I'm Abby Jones Corbin.
And we have all these beautiful faces with us today. We're all here together to just go through some more topics, some more questions, get views, and just have a good, cozy, comfy, like fireside chat.
Fireside chat, which is why some of us have on our warm pajamas, robes, whatever makes us comfortable during these COVID times, during these crazy times. So we just want to say hello again to Izzy and Zachary and Quinn and Destiny, Tiffany and Melanie and Brianna. Wow, that whole line, it was like, I felt like I was ease all the way across. Tiffany, Melanie. So I'm sorry. I was feeling good about that. So just thank you all for coming back to have this end of season 1, topic 1 discussion so that we could get a little bit more in depth and have all of you guys here at once. As you all can tell, because we've all watched and I've rewatched a lot of the episodes, and we touched on a lot of things individually. So we just wanted to bring everybody back and have everybody get a chance to share a little bit more in depth now that, we made it through.
Right. And I think that, and it's great that this is coming out because it is the wonderful Black History Month.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
I'm not going to say that it's the shortest month of the year that they chose for us and all those other things that we all know is true, because I'm going to steal something from McDonald's. Black History is 365, baby. So now that we've done all of that, period, absolutely right. So we're just going to jump right in so that we can get moving.
Let's get started.
And so, because the majority of our group here participated in a white leading sport, what drove you to either continue or not continue, whatever your experience is, within this dynamic?
I was going to say that I feel like it's unfair to be like, is it okay for us to do this sport when it's basically white-based? Because there's a lot of stuff that's white-based that Black people have taken over and made even better. So it like, you can have the recipe, but you don't know how to create the sauce. So like, you could try to imitate, but it'll never be the same. That's how I feel. Like, no one's going to stop me from doing something, especially race-wise.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Hey, y'all. So, I mean, for me, my own experience is that I never did cheer until Cheer New York. I did it one semester at my school, but I didn't know a lot about cheerleading in a sense, except only for what I saw and like Bring It On. So I didn't have the experience of seeing, I guess you could say from personal experience, of how white-led this sport is or originated as, you know what I mean? So for me, I joined it because I was just interested in cheerleading. And in my cheerleading team in my high school was mostly made of people of color. So that was my own experience. I just wanted something more challenging. So seeing Cheer New York and also it being an LGBTQIA inclusive group, that was my drive for it. And then after being on the team, seeing some of the dynamics and the differences between races and what expectations are in the cheerleading world against cultural expectations, or also cultural like traditions and I guess like behaviors and things that you might see that kind of clash with what used to be or is the standard of cheerleading. So that's from my experience.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
Izzy?
Hi, y'all. So, kind of like Zach was saying, I did cheerleading in college for one semester, and my team was pretty diverse. So it wasn't until I joined Cheer New York, and even helping you and Matthew out with Queens Campus Cheer, and even with you guys getting ready for nationals, I didn't realize that like cheer was like so white, based off of like where it comes from. When I actually did Google the foundation of cheerleading, it's like a very white-based sport. But like Milani said, like, when we were able to finally, do it, because they kind of like kept us away from it, we did transform it into something that it should have been from the start. And the reason why I stayed is like simply representation. Like, why leave when if you stay, you're gonna encourage more people to stay or to come and do it? Because like, I think cheerleading, the whole purpose of cheerleading is cheering everyone on. So like all walks of life should be able to do that. And also, I really feel like Stomp and Shake should be included in UCA's requirement for nationals, because QCC would get that white jacket.
Well, let me hip you to what they're trying to do with that. Is they have a section of it called UCX Urban Cheer Experience. So they're, in some instances, they are trying to bring it in. We haven't yet to experience it.
But they bring it in on the lower level, which is camp.
Yeah, they bring it.
It hasn't made it to the
competition level,
but it's in the camp level.
Yeah.
Well,
so
we will make it to the nationals level, because that's where it needs to be, so everyone can shine with all their skills.
Oh, you know what? And I have a question about that. A conversation that she and I had, and I would love to hear you guys' viewpoint. After Heisek says, I actually want to ask a question about that.
Okay.
Go ahead, Heisek.
So I was just going to say, like, I had a very different experience. I had an understanding of cheer being white, but I didn't fully grasp it until I think I was like a junior, when like cheer celebrities started to become a thing. And that's when I realized that cheer was a white-led sport. You know, like my first cheer was Bring It On, you know, and I saw a divide, but I didn't understand what that meant until I really started to see like these cheer celebrities, and it was always the white ones, and it was always the ones from Texas, and you know, all of these like California girls as well, and they were blonde, tan, and pretty, and that was my experience of like really recognizing it. And so I think why I continue to like share is, like Izzy said, representation. You know, if we're not represented, like, then people aren't going to want to continue to do it. And it's not being represented as like the black team or the white team. It's like just being represented in whatever space, whatever it is, doesn't matter. And like the longer we're here, like the more it just becomes one and like natural.
Absolutely.
Agree.
Which not to say that it isn't natural, but like, you know, integrated into our society. Just
that's one of the things that for each of person, each of our experiences, when we did our segments, almost everyone had that representation moment. Either they wanted to be that representation, or there was someone who was the representation and pushed them to either cheer or their profession or to do something in the community. But it was always representation, right? Was a big thing. But you wanted to add on.
Okay, so it kind of leads into the whole representation. So like Izzy was just saying about them putting Stomp and Shake on the national level. So how do you guys feel about them creating the UCX Avenue, but it's almost dividing us and not wanting us to learn and achieve that traditional style of cheer, but they are kind of opening up a lane for us? So it's like, do you guys see where it's like it's a good thing, but a bad thing, but still a good thing? Like, what are you guys' thoughts on that?
Oh, Quinn?
I was just gonna say, I find it interesting because I think that in the way that our society works right now, I think the way to introduce like Stomp and Shake or those other forms into cheerleading is to have its own avenue. I don't think it should be that way. I think it should be all inclusive, but I think unfortunately things sometimes need to be eased in because people don't always accept them, and they're always a little bit wary, and they're always like, what is this gonna bring? What is the connotation? So I don't think it is the best way. I think it is probably the quote unquote PC way that I could see UCA saying, like, this is okay, we can slowly bring it in. So I mean, it's not great. It's something. I wish it weren't that way, but I think that is probably the only acceptable way that it's going to happen anytime soon.
And real quick before we go to Brianna, just to add in, what's interesting is when we went to camp and had and our team performed Stomp and Shake, a Stomp and Shake tier, because that's what we do on the sideline. There were many other teams, predominantly white teams, that wanted to learn.
They want to learn it.
They wanted to learn it.
Mm-hmm.
So then it becomes, okay, I know that predominantly Black teams in the UCA world, it's what we do, but will they come over to Urban Cheer Exchange? And just to let you all know, Stomp and Shake does have a nationals.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not on the same level nationwide as UCA. But all of these things, it's a real interesting. But go ahead, Brianna, and then we're gonna go to Izzy.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm pretty much in agreement with what Quinn was saying about how I think that is their way of slowly integrating the different styles into the same world, but it does give a bit of a separate but, you know, equal feels. So yeah, you've seen it before, like with lots of other Black teams, even in the same Bring It On scenario where the Black team is generally shunned away and, you know, oh, they're moving their hips too much, you know, it looks sloppy because, you know, they have a little bit more bounce than they would like. But I mean, it is going to be a slow transition because we've gone already so long with this like belittlement almost of the style of dance and the style of from the way we wear our hair to the way we call our chairs. Like that's really
right.
It.
And what's funny about that is I can remember myself being at camp, and it's funny because the kids want to learn it. Then the coaches will look at you and smile and say, oh, that's cute. But do you think they would ever let their kids go back and do that stuff on their sidelines?
Except for the chick on YouTube or Instagram that tried it.
Oh,
sorry, I had to throw that out there. Go ahead,
right.
Izzy.
But it's funny to see how a lot of times it doesn't even come from the children. It comes from the adults.
But it always comes from the adults first. But we'll get to that. Go ahead, Iz.
When I was thinking about like Stomp and Shake coming into UCA, I was thinking like we should let whatever teams that know how to do Stomp and Shake implicate that into their routines. Because if it's a skill that they have, Stomp and Shake is technically a traditional form of cheerleading. So if they have a category that's called traditional, then this is what we consider traditional. I mean, it started back in the 1970s, 1960s. So they should be able to implicate that into their routines. I don't think there needs to be a separate division, but like Quinn was saying, that's pretty much how America works with having to integrate cultures into the white spaces. But I do personally feel like since QCC, like the girls are amazing at Stomp and Shake, imagine putting the two worlds together, how fantastic that routine would be with Stomp and Shake and like quote unquote traditional cheer together. I feel like that would make, you know, it would set them apart because I really feel like all these cheerleader competitions, everyone looks the same. So if you implicate other ways that people do cheerleading, it make the competition even harder, but also better to watch and like in general, just a better form of cheerleading, if you know what I'm talking about.
I don't have a lot of knowledge of cheerleading or kind of the history of it, but this also sounds similar to me knowing about the challenges I face being in a fraternity that is Latino based but multicultural. And in Latino based and especially like the D9 historically Black fraternities and sororities, stepping is a huge cultural tradition. It starts way back to slavery. And a lot of times, and its roots are built upon that too. And a lot of times what we faced when I was an undergrad was the cultural orgs or orgs of color, whether they were D9 or Latino based, were able to step. And then we had mainstream orgs or the white orgs that we had that some of them wanted to learn how to step. Yeah, or some of them wanted to learn how to step, or some of them might have done it at a Meet the Greeks or like one of the like school events. And what my concern about the same thing is bringing that aspect and having it kind of separate in the cheer world is, and what I face with fraternity stuff is that if we want to integrate our cultural style and variants and ways that we do cheerleading and this section 2 into it, it also kind of has to be, but I feel like there also needs to be a little bit of openness to allowing those that are not part of that culture to come in, but then also them finding the way that they can emulate it, but be respectful without being cultural appropriation. So it's like for stepping, like a lot of times we had a lot of the mainstream orgs that if we saw them stepping, a lot of my members and other fraternities and sororities were like, you can't step. It's like, it's not in your tradition. It's not in your foundation. Like that is something from our culture. And it was very like, which I understood. There's a lot of pride and a lot of history behind it. And there's a meaning behind it that we do, that the reason why we step. At the same time, we're also talking about like our orgs need to be equal. So if we're going to be equal and allow ourselves to have some type of equality in some sense too, not that we have to give or take, I would say like in terms of being a person of color or a Black person, but having a willingness to be a little bit open to allowing others that might not be in that community or that culture to be involved in that, maybe a tradition that we do, and make sure that like they're also doing it respectfully and not doing it to like emulate and not giving the respect and the where it's due. You know what I mean? It's like when we talk about people culture appropriating braids and stuff, like there's a way to execute anything in life that is still respectful from where you're getting it from, but you're still a lot like doing it, and where that culture or community is able to accept you for doing it, you know? And I think that's the challenge with this is like, if we're going to bring that into cheerleading where we want to bring it to a national level, absolutely we should, but we also need to make sure that we're not too like resistant to allowing people not in that culture or in the Black community or in the community of color to be able to do that as well on their teams.
That's true. I think that it just becomes hard for us sometimes as Black people because we have been trained in our minds the part of everyone could do what we could do, but we couldn't do what they could do. So when people try to step into the Black culture, it makes us automatically put up that wall like, whoa, hold on.
So now we don't have nothing.
Right, nothing at all because we couldn't step into their world, but they were always able to step into ours. So what do you guys think? What drives you to share your experience today with being Black men and women within the cheer world, work world, dance world, gymnastics world? What drives you to share these experiences today, whether they be recent or past experiences? And what makes you want to keep this conversation going? So in a way, what makes you want to be here today? Yeah. What makes you want to sit in front of us today and have these types of conversations?
I think it goes back to representation because even going back to what you're talking about, competitions, they started, my predominantly white school started to notice they get more points if they would put me in front for dances, just because they would. So they put me in front and I liked it, of course, obviously I want to be in the front. But I also thought of it as representation too, like I'm the only Black girl on this team and I'm like in the front, the point holding it down. And I'm like, yeah, looking at you, you could do it too. Like, come on, you could do cheer. So I feel like that's such a big thing because now looking at it, I get to cheer as an adult. And I was literally the only Black cheerleader in middle school and high school. So now all these people get to cheer with me and I never had to experience that before. So it's working. The representation is working, in my opinion.
Yeah, it is. Tiffany?
Yeah, really similar about the representation, but also I think it just feels like such a privilege and like a joy to be able to talk about these things, because when I do think about growing up, like even though I was one of the only Black people on the team and I did feel really uncomfortable, I never felt like I could say anything about it. Like, and maybe one time, and we talked about this in our thing with like hair, would like bring it up of like, oh, I can't do that hairstyle, like what should I do? And even then I felt so nervous because I just felt like I was the one causing a problem or rocking the boat, and it was easier to just ignore it. So now I'm always happy for opportunities where we get to actually talk about it. And I'm really happy personally to be so comfortable to talk about it because I wasn't all the way up through school until adulthood.
Safe space.
Yeah, and it's funny because we don't realize that when we don't get to talk about those moments as children, now being 34 years old, it coming up, it's kind of like, it feel like woosah moment, even now talking about something that happened to you when you were 13, 14
Yeah,
years
because
old.
now we've created a safe space, and not just for us. And like we keep bringing up this word, but it's so true. Representation. It's a safe space for those, even those that are not on this call with us, even those that we weren't able to have these conversations with. Now it's like, you know what? I can, maybe when I see May, maybe when I see Quinn, maybe when I see Tiffany, I can go up to them and feel safe and secure that they will understand, or at least hear me out of whatever's going on. You know, they may not feel comfortable with everyone, but they can find someone that they can go to now, and they see that it's not just me, because we always felt that way. I know I did. It's like, oh, it's just me. Nobody understands.
Or like Tiff said, it made her feel like she was rocking the boat.
You
like
rocking the boat.
Like she was the problem.
I'm the angry Black woman. You know, still that underscore. Bree, you had some more to say?
Yeah, I was gonna say for me, I've always been that child who likes adventure and always wants a challenge. So cheer for me has always been that anchor, and I wouldn't let it go really just for anything, let alone someone looking at me or looking at me as if I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing. And I know that this is probably one of the healthiest sport I have ever been in for myself and my mind and my body. And it continues to satisfy me when I see little girls who look just like me wanting to achieve whatever goal, whether it be in gymnastics, because since I also coach gymnastics, I mainly I see my little girls and they, oh my goodness, how did you get so good? Oh girl, trust me, because I was working my butt off since I was your age to try to get this good. It did not happen overnight. So that to me is what just keeps me going.
Yeah, I mean, so I had a different experience, and I touched on it in my episode about how I was gay before I was Black. And I think that was definitely where I saw my representation, when I first started cheer. And I didn't feel like I was represented as being Black until I joined Cheer New York, because I had just never seen that before. I had never seen someone who was openly flamboyant and gay and Black and in cheer. That wasn't a reality to me. I was an anomaly in my hometown, and I was the only, I was closeted, but everyone knew that I was gay, and I was a cheerleader.
It wasn't a secret.
It wasn't a secret, but it was a secret.
There was no secret. Secret was to myself. That was it. But I'm glad that I got to be that representation of you can be gay and you can be, I feel like I'm very racially ambiguous, and people feel like they can throw that onto me. So if I'm representing for someone who is Hispanic, even though I'm not Hispanic, someone who is, Dominican, someone who feels like they can see themselves in me, that was where I felt like I continue to want to do it, because I didn't want to limit myself to just being representation of being gay, but I can represent multiple people, whoever they can see themselves.
The representation of minorities.
Yeah,
exactly. Yes, of all minorities. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because if you think about it, we all have multiple representations.
Yeah.
It's not just, okay, for some of us, the first thing people do see is that we're Black. Like I always say, we walk out our front door, someone standing on the street corner on the curb, the first thing they'll see is whatever the color of our skin is, or whatever they think the color of our skin represents, period. Before we open our mouth, before we show them our paycheck, before we tell them what our title is, before anything else, that's the first thing. But then after that, we all get to be deeper.
Right.
I never, Deshauna's not on the call, but I never knew that I was representation to Deshauna on the parade route for her to even want to join Cheer New York. I was out there, big girl, working out for the big girl, but being proud in it and not realizing, that was, she was like, I see her not only as a Black woman, but hey, we don't have to be body shamed and blah, blah, and all that other kind of things. So for all of us, we have multiple, we're deeper than just, our skin color, and we all know that. And it's and so I just think this is a way for us to show that, to showcase that we are so diverse. I mean, Dr. Quinn, medicine woman over here. You know, we have teacher Tiffany, teacher Destiny. We have, you know, the big money queen, Queen May.
Queen May.
You know, we got Anita D.
Yeah, we got big men.
We got, you know what? I didn't say that. We got TikTok sensation choreographer extraordinaire over here. You know, we got Blurred Con, Comic Con. You know, down here with Hezekiah.
Wait, what was the Black Con?
Blurred Con.
Yeah, Blurred Con. Yes.
Black Nerd.
Yeah, Black Nerd. Yes.
You know what I mean? We have high sit. You know,
Yes.
high fashion. You know, and we have Bree gymnastics, and then we just, you know, everything else.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm just saying it gives me pride and joy just to look at the screen, and I know, and just to see where we've been, where our experiences have taken us through, and where we continue to go. You know, because none of us have reached where we need to go, you know, where we need to be. I heard someone say today, the top of one mountain is just the bottom of another. And we just have to keep on, you know.
Like May said in her episode, the attitude of what's next.
What's next? What's next? So since we're being, you know, during these times, these trying times, and, you know, we are all more cognizant of what implicit bias is and how we each have expressed that we have or haven't experienced. What does, and I know Izzy's gonna raise his hand real quick when I say this word, what does that mean to educating others, whether we like it or not, on what implicit bias means? Doesn't necessarily mean we had to bring out, you know, a bulleted, you know, slide to say, okay, everybody, this is what you need to understand. But just from our experiences, you know, Destiny, what do you think about that?
So I think the most important thing to understand about education, about racism, is that the education is not the goal. I feel like there is just so much, you can get a lot of energy around conversations, and it can be these endless conversations, and conversations are great, but conversations are a starting point. The education about racism is the precursor to actually taking anti-racist actions and improving the conditions that are actually holding people of color back. And I think, you know, sometimes we can get real stuck on implicit bias. You know, let's talk about implicit bias. And, you know, we all saw this summer, every organization talking about, you know, oh, you know, we're talking about race. We've got our Black Square. We've got, you know, we're having book clubs, so you want to talk about race and white fragility and all these things. And like, but did anything actually change? Is your board still 95% white? Like, what's actually happening here? And so I think getting stuck in the, you know, managing the racism and talking about the racism. And
I like that, manage.
You know what, and I really agree with that. Like, because that is, I would love to see that something like that on a shirt. It's more than just a conversation. Like you said, a conversation is a starting point. And that's one thing that people like. Everybody just talks and talks.
Well, because I'm going to get to Izzy, and then we're going to, you know, in 2 seconds, as soon as I say this, because the establishment has been so good at having conversation, and conversation has appeased us enough in the past. Well, it really hasn't appeased us, but it has appeased them. It appeased themselves to say, okay, we talked about it, so now you should be pacified and we can move on from there. So that's why conversation has been so much. They think conversation has been, you know, good. And I'm just going to touch real quick on the recent past. Is the conversation was real good on January 6th and January 7th, but now that the time has come, you know, to put the, you know, everybody's feet to the fire, now all of a sudden it's like conversation is just divisive. We shouldn't take it any further. So that's what they're good at. Yeah. That is what.
And it's normally not that many of us sitting at the table having the conversation.
Correct. Go ahead, Iz.
Just to piggyback off what Destiny said, because I think that is pretty much why I have been so hard and pushed the fact that it's really not our job to do that, because when we do step up, and I've done this within my friend circle, because these are the people, my white friends or my non-Black friends, when I have these conversations with them, I know for a fact that they're going to apply what I said, and we're not going to have this conversation again. But I really do feel like there's so many people outside of my circle that have posted those Black squares, and like, I'm with you. The people that sent me those texts, like, or how are you feeling today? I know having a hard time, that do not take what they learn and apply it to their life. That's why I really do feel like, why I get so angry, I'm like, I'm not having these conversations with these people. I don't know if they're going to take these lessons and apply it, because I really do feel like since the summer, a lot of these organizations have hired their white guilt cleanup crew to take care of everything that everything that happened with the murders of those 3 Black folks, and try and be like, okay, we need to get on top of this so we don't seem racist. We don't care if you seem racist, mama. What we want you to do is to learn from this. So going forward, we don't have to hashtag another person's name and spread that over social media. The goal is people not dying because of the color of their skin. The goal is not having to be 10 times as good just to be seen. So like, just like Destiny hit the nail on the head with that. Like, I mean, going forward, I'm really trying to be a conversation starter. But child, if you are not a close friend of mine or someone that I really do feel like can put these lessons to get used, my mouth is shut. There's Google, and that's on period.
I'm sorry. And the reason I'm laughing is because he is so true, because and I knew that's what you would say, because I've been around you and I know that's your mantra, and I'm with you. I fully understand it, but I love it when you say they got Google. Like, you look for Google for everything else. Zach.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everyone, like a lot of the points that were said. I would say the other thing too is it takes a lot of energy to try to educate someone. And I would say I would relate this also to the experience of being a gay person and having conversations with allies and straight people. It takes a lot of energy to try to tell a straight person the struggles that you go through as a gay person. And what makes it more frustrating is trying to tell someone that wants to try to have a conversation, but really won't allow themselves to be open for change. So even if you're making it blunt to their face, like, this is what I go through every day, this is what you don't go through, do you see why I'm upset and why I need the equality? And they still don't see it, then I'm like, okay, like, I'm done. Because like, now it's not a fruitful conversation. It's not a conversation for change. It's literally it's a battle between your opinion and mine, and we're trying to persuade each other to change each other's mindset, and it's not working. There are times where I've had uncomfortable conversations about like the Black Lives Matter movement, about racism, about systemic racism, about also like even inequalities within the LGBTQIA community. Well, yeah, IA community, to those that are allies or to those that are not Black. And you know, if I see that there is a willingness for them to listen, then I am willing to share from my experience. I'm not a history book. I'm not an encyclopedia. I don't have all the facts. Okay, Google is there for that. So is every other search engine. But I can give you from my experience what I go through. And then if I see that you're willing to listen, to truly listen and try to apply that, then I don't mind having the conversation. But a lot of times what we're facing is people just trying to like shout out their opinions and talk more than they listen. And it's like, baby, we got 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. You should be listening twice as much as you talk. And some of us talk twice as much than we listen. So that's the thing that we face with it. And I relate a lot of the stuff of being Black with also being gay, because we're both, I mean, I'm in a community, 2 communities that are minorities, you know, and it's a similar thing of like, who do we educate? How many people do we need to educate? Do we even need to educate when they can find out more facts? And it's like, instead of me educating you on all the facts, I can educate you with my experience, and we can compare on that. And hopefully that will enlighten you, because it's coming from not just a fact checking like search engine, it's coming from me, who you probably know personally. And I think sometimes having that personal connection with a friend, it helps change their mindset. I think there is room for us to allow for some education. It just isn't our obligation to do it. But if we find someone that is really open to and comes to us asking questions, not out of disrespect, not out of just being curious and nosy, but out of wanting to be a better person, then I think that's a golden opportunity to take that and share your experience with them to maybe hopefully change them to be a better person in the future.
I think sometimes for me, I look at Well, I guess I could say that. I look at it as bullshit sometimes. When people, because it's not that difficult to be loving and caring to everyone. It's not that difficult to be accepting of everyone. It's not that difficult to understand that who you are and what you do is not my choice and it's not up to me. So therefore I can't try to demeanor you or make you feel less than because you don't believe or do the same things that I do. And I think people automatically get in that mind frame especially if you are upper class white. If it doesn't affect me, I'm not concerned about it. If it has nothing to do with me, I'm going to continue to look this way and act like none of this stuff over here is going on that I know is not right. Mm-hmm. And it gets frustrating because it's like you said, why are we educating you on something that should be common sense?
So let me go back into the old school books.
Common sense ain't so common.
One, common sense ain't so common. And two, we also have to remember that we just said it at the beginning of this episode. People are taught from a young age what you are around, who you are around. When you're like, we've seen it, especially because of social media or whatever, you see when little kids, especially the little black boy and little white boy that were really good friends, but they were like toddlers, like 2 years old. They didn't know that they were different. They thought they were twins. Mm-hmm. They have to be taught. They have to be told. Someone has to tell them. We were brought up, and listening to everyone's conversations here, we were brought up in households where we were taught to be open-minded and kind and understanding and know that people are different, but that's okay. Let them be who they are. Like, that's just who we are. But everyone did not have that and does not have that. Sure. And sometimes breaking that cycle is a little harder, because what happens is when they start to see this, all of a sudden their life becomes uncomfortable. When you've been comfortable for so long, when uncomfortability comes, when something comes to knock you a little bit and you're not used to it, and money can't fix it, your parents can't fix it. When you're uncomfortable and it smacks you in the face, you'd rather push it away and say, no, I want to go over here to my comfort zone. I don't want to go over there because that's too hard for me. We've been through hard, whether it was a little bit, a lot, or we've seen it. That's what we've come from. And so, not to say that gives them an excuse. Right. That's just the reason behind why some of them are just straight.
This is why I say bullshit.
But we also have to remember that some are brought up, and as you can see, and I keep going back to social media because those are the times, and that's where people are getting their information from, where you see parents and millennials are splitting. Like, their parents are hardcore racist, and the children are like, what is wrong with you? And then the parents actually cut the kids off. Yeah. Stuff like that is happening. And so I always, even though I understand the BS and I understand, that we're not here to educate, but I also know that some people have some raw deals when it comes to, the parent pool. Yeah. And it's not for me to fix their parents or whatever, but I guess I always have hope, and I always feel that in some instances we can pull some of these people back out of the abyss. Not that I'm gonna try all the time, but
So, question for this is obviously for everyone. So, how do you guys connect your blackness to your blackness to your life experiences? Being that we're all sitting on here, we're all Black men and women, but we all come from different walks of life. We all have different experiences. We all went through different things. But what do you guys think is the connection between all of us with being Black and experiences?
I feel like it relates back to representation. Like, we each have a story where we feel like we were represented in that moment. And so, like, I think that's what connects, that we all have done something to feel like we're represented, to feel like we're going to represent for other people. And I think that's what it always ties back to, is like, someone's done something, someone has said something, and that's where you continue. And that's how it all like connects.
I would say just from my Black experience, and seeing from this reunion and also just everyone's story and also just the conversations we had, seeing the differences or acknowledge. I think the main thing is for me, from my Black experience, is acknowledging that there's things missing that I wish I would have had or been educated on, or really got into my culture and loving and appreciating it. Because like I told you, I was raised by my mom, who is white, but she grew up within like the African American community. She cooks soul food. Like she's just been like, and she's always dated someone of color. And so she's always, I mean, joking in the neighborhoods that we grew up in, she was always like the white woman with a Black soul. Like you hear her on the phone, she sounds like she's from the South, you know, like all of these kind of cultural things. So I was exposed and raised in the atmosphere of like just Black excellence in some aspects, but not from someone that was Black. Like my dad wasn't really in my life. And so now reflecting on that and seeing that there are parts of me that didn't have that aspect growing up, it's motivated me to really dive into my culture, dive into the roots of certain dance forms, incorporate it in my drag when I perform, incorporate celebrating not only people of color, but Black artists in all aspects, and recognizing the contributions that the Black community has had within different aspects of life: fashion, dance, choreography, videos, everything, music industry, drag culture as well. So I think having that experience and seeing, I guess, the lack of experiences that I haven't had in comparison to my other fellow members here has motivated me to really want to, I guess you could say, like, kind of educate myself on my tradition and my roots and kind of where I come from.
And I think that that's beautiful, because I don't think in our minds that we thought that when we started this, it was kind of more so to get our story out there to other people, not realizing that our stories would help each other, which is even more beautiful. Tiff, then Izzy, then Heisey.
I think something that we all have in common, despite where we came from and our differences, is that we have all these stories because we've been aware of our race for a long time, whereas white people are often made aware of their race like much later on. So they don't have these like stories of growing up and how their race impacted their life because they weren't aware. And I do a lot of workshops or professional development, and a lot of times the facilitator will ask everybody to share, when were you first aware of your race? And at first I was always shocked that a lot of white people it was when they were in college and, they met someone who was a different race, or in a workshop like this is the first time I've really thought about the fact that I was white, even 5 years ago when we were doing this. And so I always think that's interesting. And like, my answer is always when I was born, because I was born to a white mom without my dad there. And she always has the story of like the doctors being like, there's something wrong. Like, she looks really weird. She has jaundice, like putting me under a jaundice light. And so like I've heard that story since I could understand anything. So I think that's something that brings all Black people in particular together, is that for the most part, we've been aware for a really long time that we're Black and that impacts us somehow.
I never thought of it that way, that we have a story. Like we have stories because we've been aware of it so long.
That was the perfect way to put it.
Because I thought everybody had a story. They don't have, okay, my bad.
Just to piggyback off what Tiffany said, I literally, like, my Black experience is kind of just from the time I was pushed out the moon. It's like, you're Black. So it's like, and then I was very fortunate to grow up in Fresh Meadows, New York, which at the time, before becoming predominantly Asian, was a very diverse community. And we had multicultural day like maybe 4 times a school year. So I got to learn about a lot of cultures from a very, very young age. So the whole, like, me being a Black man and society not liking that didn't come until later for me. And when I started learning that other people were having these problems as well, not just like Black people, but like my Asian friends, my Hispanic friends were having issues with white society treating them different. And that's where I think everybody's stories kind of tie in. Even like my white friends were like, this is not right. That was them learning like something's not right from where I kind of come from. So then now they kind of learn that experience and they tie it into their own, because I just know how to pick the right people to be in my circle, which a lot of people don't know how to do.
But let me piggyback off of that. Let me give you a history lesson on Fresh Meadows and date myself. Because I moved to Fresh Meadows when I was 15 years old, which was probably 20 some odd years before you got there. And when we moved, my mother and I, my black single mom and my black self, moved to Fresh Meadows, it was predominantly white. 99% white and like 85% Jewish. And so when we moved in, it was my mother and I on the 16th floor, and my girlfriend and her mom, another single mom, black mom, on the 2nd floor. That was it. In this 20-story building and some people that know about Flushing and Fresh Meadows, how big that complex is, how many apartments, like that was it. And so I'm just saying that to say, to fast forward to Izzy's moving to Fresh Meadows, saying that it was multicultural and diverse, even in that short time frame, things can change, and we have to learn from that. And now when we go back, of course, it's not multicultural again, it's back to a single culture, but that's because things happen, people move. So
and people move when areas change. So we started moving in, and everybody that was elderly and white actually moved to Florida, because this was they would come in the summer and then go to Florida in the winter, and then they just realized there was just too much going on. They all started moving out because it started to become multicultural. And then as when I left to go to Maryland, and one part of Flushing is like little Chinatown started, and then the Asian culture started spreading out in Flushing, and it's Korean and Chinese, and it started taking over, and that's what it is now. So it's just interesting to watch.
I think we all feel connected because, like, at least for me, I was listening to like everyone's stories, and like I found myself picking parts out, and I was like, wait, I've gone through that. And we all have like very similar experiences. And I think that's what ends up connecting us all, is that we all have very different experiences, but they're all somehow, are intertwined. The girls, a lot of them talked about hair. And, I know that Zachary and Tiffany talked about being biracial, and like growing up around that. And so like being able to like identify these different things, like we all ended up feeling even more connected than just, color of our skin tone, that we have similar experiences, even though they are different experiences. And I think that's what continues to connect us to everyone within our culture. And it was like Zachary was saying, like, even if you didn't grow up around that, like now's the opportunity to throw yourself into that and to learn more about it, no matter what your background, because at the end of the day, that's still your community, and it's an opportunity for yourself to learn even more.
Just going off what Isaac said, it just brought me back to a thought about the summer after Breonna Taylor's murder, and the idea that, you kind of look at somebody else who's Black, and you may not know their story, you may not know them, but you kind of know inherently that they, at some point in their life, came up against something, they were taught something, they know their history. And I was at work one day, and I work with another member of our team who's also Black, and we saw each other across the ER and just like ran and hugged each other. There were no words, nothing else was needed. It was just like, I get you, I know you, like there's something inherent about what our experience has been, and we don't need words for it. It was really special, and it's not something I realized how important it was until that really happened. So I think there's just like that inherent sense that we all grow up with, regardless of if you grew up in the South or in the North or in the West, or if your first experience with racism was as a child or not till you're an adult. It's something that just kind of binds us, and I think it's really powerful.
I think it is.
For you to say that is powerful. Powerful without even words.